I'm going to start over. Jeremy, thank you for mentioning the Polio International Day. Hello and welcome everyone. My name is Marta Castilleja, co-vice president of the World Disability Advocacy Group of the Rotary Club. And I am honored to serve as a moderator at this Inclusive Education Summit, a gathering dedicated to transforming how we educate children with disabilities. I was a child with a disability. I'm a polio survivor. I was in a school in Mexico 70 years ago, so you can imagine the situation, when inclusive education was not even a dream. Now it is a reality to give quality of life to children with disabilities. The title of the presentation that I will moderating is The Future of Inclusive Education, Transformational Leadership, presented by author and consultant Dr. Natasha Veale. This topic is a vital piece of the inclusive education puzzle because it provides a better quality of education for all students by fostering a culture of belonging, acceptance, and respect. Whether you are a parent, educator, policymaker, or advocate, this wonderful presentation will equip you with tools, insights, and inspiration to drive a real change for students with or without disabilities, for teachers, for the school system, and for the society in general. This presentation explores the Transforming Special Education Leadership, TSEL, framework, a practical guide for school leaders to enhance inclusive education. It shows how TSEL supports students with disabilities and helps retain special education teachers by promoting inclusion, success, and well-being. Dr. Natasha Veale is a special education leadership consultant, teacher educator, college administrator, and former special education teacher. Having worked in the special education field since 2000 and being driven by a passion for helping educators and leaders succeed, she earned a PhD in special education leadership to develop, support, and advocate for special education teachers, and an ADD in organizational change and administration to develop, support, and advocate for school administrator. She is the author of the book, How to Retain Special Education Teachers. Please welcome Dr. Veale with her presentation, The Future of Inclusive Education, Transformational Leadership. Dr. Veale, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are in the world. It is so wonderful to be here with everyone. I will jump right in to share my screen to begin the presentation. Thank you so much for introducing me this morning. Once again, the title of my presentation is The Future of Inclusive Education, Transformational Leadership. Again, I'm Dr. Natasha Veale. Thank you so much for that introduction. I wanted to highlight that I'm from Greensboro College in Greensboro, North Carolina. So I'm from the United States, and I hail from Greensboro College as like she said, an administrator, a dean of the School of Social Sciences and Education, but I also coordinate the special education programs for licensing our teachers to teach students with disabilities. So why did I conduct this research? Back during the pandemic, of course, we all know that there were significant issues in education. And as a teacher educator, I support, mentor, advocate for teachers who support students with disabilities. Well, in my program, there was an uptick in this disheartening feeling of the teachers not feeling supported. And in the discussions with them, I found that they felt that their administrators were were not supporting them the way they felt they needed. And of course, in our research, in past research, it showed that school administrators, do not have, or sometimes may not have a background in special education. So my thought was, well, how can I get into the conversations with school administrators to find out what their leadership practices were toward their special education teachers in order to hopefully improve special education teacher retention? Because if my candidates and my programs were saying, I don't know, David, I don't think I want to continue doing this, I don't feel supported, I felt like something needed to be done. And so as I looked into this area, the problem that I found, and considering that I'm in North Carolina, the attrition rate for teachers, for beginning teachers, is as high as 17.5%. And for veteran teachers, as high as 26.8%. And so with that, and understanding that school administrators demonstrate a lack of knowledge in special education and inclusive practices, I thought there has to be a connection between the teachers leaving and the administrators not presenting the knowledge that they have in order to support those teachers. So when I went into the research, I found different articles, and there was a study of 134 principals, and we found that 75% of the principal prep programs did not include special education in their curriculum. That was eye-opening. And so a quote from that is, "It is a responsibility of principal preparation programs to provide the necessary curriculum content and to develop the necessary knowledge and skills of future principals in preparation of their roles as advocates for the free and appropriate education of all students." And of course, that includes our students with disabilities. And so when I think of the future of inclusive education, the future of those administrators, the future principals who are being prepared to teach students with disabilities, it needs to include special education. It needs to include instruction for students with disabilities in order to then broaden the scope of how those administrators are able to support their special education teachers in order to improve student outcomes. So why does this matter? It is necessary to increase administrative support, to improve special education teacher retention, to therefore improve special education student outcomes, students with disabilities outcomes. And so in another study, this was held in completed in 2020, 366 special education teachers across 34 states in the United States regarding their work-related stress and why they leave the field. A third of them said it was their administrator that was the main cause of their stress. And so they said that the administrators were totally clueless about special education and unable to see the students as valuable people. And then went on to say, if administration fails to provide a supportive work environment, teachers will continue to feel disempowered and ultimately choose to leave the field. And I experienced that as a former special education teacher, I will admit that, but also supporting and mentoring those current teachers while they were obtaining their license. I understood firsthand what this said, because they also felt that way as well. It also I also was able to, in conversation with the administrators I spoke to, gain their insights. And so there was one administrator with 2 years of experience. She said, truthfully, special education is the weakest area of my leadership. I'm starting to do things to strengthen that, but I feel like not only the administrative programs at colleges, but even regular education programs at colleges and universities don't spend nearly enough time in the EC realm. And here, EC is exceptional children or students with disabilities. So she said you might take a class on abnormal psych, or you might take all these on child development, and that helps you recognize that maybe this student is not able to do what they are able to do developmentally is appropriate, but you can pick up on things just by what you've read and studied, but not the interventions that the teachers need to do in the classroom, as well as what extra help they get, whether they're in resource or inclusion. That's not part of most preparation programs. I'll be honest, I feel like some of our EC students are just getting robbed of the education they deserve and the education that they're entitled to. So this administrator felt like students with disabilities were getting robbed of their education because of the lack of special education curriculum in those principal preparation programs where it all starts. Because the leader of the school, the one who sets the tone for the school, the one who sets the tone for inclusion, inclusive education, and special education, weren't being prepared fully for those students or those teachers who teach them. So why did I create a framework? Like I said before, there's a teacher shortage. There's a national teacher shortage in the United States, and I'm sure there is a shortage across the world as well. Special education teacher working conditions and administrative behaviors should be understood to improve teacher retention. And in the studies that I read, there were general education studies, regular ed studies, principals were significantly linked to teacher job satisfaction and work performance. And there were positive links between principals or school administrators, transformational leadership behaviors, and teacher commitment for the general education teachers. So I thought, is it possible for inclusive and special education? Yes, yes, it is. Our special education teachers can feel that they are satisfied with their jobs and they can be committed to staying and working with those students with disabilities to reach their fullest potential if principals were more adept with transformational leadership behaviors that were related to the special education leadership of their schools. So I focused on transformational leadership in my study that I created because a transformational leader influences positive change for both themselves and their followers, resulting in a higher level of accomplishment than expected. And my thought was the high level of accomplishment is the higher special education teacher retention and more inclusive settings, more opportunities for students to be successful in the regular education classroom with the support of the students, the teachers who teach the students with the disabilities in those classrooms. Also, transformational leadership involves emotions, ethics, and long-term goals. But what I highlighted here, treating them like human beings, where if I have teachers who've constantly said that they don't feel supported, they feel ignored, they don't feel like they're important in the school, transformational leadership kind of can change that frame, and the leader can treat them like they are present, that they are human beings in that school and they're a part of it. And so the 4 areas of transformational leadership: inspirational motivation, idealized influence, intellectual stimulation, and individual consideration. And so for those of you who are not quite familiar with transformational leadership, the 4 areas: inspirational motivation involves the leader demonstrating optimism, showing a team spirit, motivating followers to reach their goals. Idealized influence, they model working collaboratively, inspires respect and trust, and identifies with their followers. Intellectual stimulation, they can stimulate innovation and creativity and problem solving, creative problem solving. And for individual consideration, a leader can create a supportive environment, recognize individuality, and listen effectively. These are the areas of transformational leadership. So the study that I conducted in North Carolina, where I live, I wanted to focus on public school principals, so building level administrators. In our state, we have 115 school districts, and I reached out to 91 of those school districts, and 31 of those districts proved the research. And I focused on elementary, middle, and high schools, and I wanted to interview principals across the state. So I was able to interviewed principals in 11 different school districts. Thing is, they were supposed to not have special education background, which most of them, well, none of them had special ed background, and to be employed for at least 2 academic years. The range of the people, the administrators I spoke to, their years of experience was 1 year to 13 years. I allowed the person with the 1 year of principal experience in the study because he said he had spent 10 years as an assistant principal or vice principal where he led the special education programs at their school. So I felt it was befitting for him to be a part of the study. So the themes that came of it, I asked them questions based on the 4 transformational leadership behaviors and what their experiences were positively. What were their positive experiences leading their special education teachers and their special education programs? And so they were able to talk about aspects of the special ed teacher workload, ways that they supported the heavy caseloads that the special education teachers had. They were able to talk about how they developed relationships with their special ed teachers and considered their needs. Not, there weren't very many positive occurrences that they can think of, but they did think of a few. And also how they encouraged the growth of their special education teachers. One administrator mentioned how he helped a teacher enter her master's program and supported her through gaining additional education. And he was quite happy to share that information. But then the next set of questions led to the barriers to them engaging in transformational leadership behaviors. I wanted to know what prevented the administrators from being able to successfully support the special education teachers and the students with disabilities in their schools. And so the areas were parents and general education teachers, lack of knowledge about students with disabilities and how to support them, or the eligibility process in order to help them receive services. They also had issues with the special education problems that would occur at the state and district level that they felt like they had no control over. There were several that mentioned relationship problems between themselves and their teachers, their special ed teachers. One in particular said that their their special education teacher, had a wall up because of her former administrators at a different school. She didn't open up to him at her school, at that present school, because of past occurrences. So sometimes, it's hard to build a relationship with that teacher if a former administrator kind of changed their outlook on their place in the school. So that was a barrier that that administrator has specifically with that special ed teacher. They also mentioned, and all of them mentioned, self-efficacy concerns, meaning their belief in their ability to be transformational leaders for their special education teachers, for their students with disabilities. They admitted and acknowledged that they didn't have a background in special education. And so it wasn't very much talked about, but I found that it was uh, eye-opening, and they appreciated talking about this topic with me. They also had barriers with other aspects of special ed teacher workload, meaning that sometimes they just didn't know what to do about the heavy caseloads that the teachers experienced, and they didn't know how to support the students with disabilities because they didn't really know what those students needed, because they didn't have the background in special education. And so then I asked, well, what do you need? What knowledge, resources, and skills do you need to become a leader in special education at your school? And they wanted to build their self-efficacy and wanted professional development. They wanted professional development for their special ed teachers and the paraprofessionals in those classrooms, realizing that they need additional and specific support as well. They want to build relationships with their special education teachers, understanding that they don't have the frame of reference to really connect with their special ed teachers. So they wanted to find ways to do so. They also wanted parents and general ed teachers to learn and gain education on special education processes and just how to help and support their students, because they also don't have that background in special education as well. And also they wanted district related support in addition to support they would already receive. So the study I conducted allowed for self-reflection. These administrators were able to talk about the fact that they do want to feel confident in their ability to lead their special education teachers. They didn't feel confident yet, but they wanted to. They had a desire to learn more about special education teachers' needs and to build relationships and rapport. And that was really great to hear. And they also want to improve their ability to support special ed teachers by maybe taking additional classes or gaining some professional development. It was very eye-opening, and it caused me to think, okay, I hope I could get to talk to more administrators who feel this way but may not have a platform to share. At the district level, principals wanted the district level administrators to support them throughout the year and not just in the summer times, because few of them said that they may have a couple of workshops in the summer or at the beginning of the school year, but not really much during the academic year. So that was an implication for school districts. And also they wanted to receive support from inclusive and special ed specialists or instructional coaches so that they can understand kind of what to do with those students in those classes on a deeper level from someone who is an expert in it. And also they wanted the school districts to offer professional development on co-teaching, on those practices that fosters collaborative environments between the special education and general education teachers so that they can work together. So after conducting the research and realizing, okay, so I have this information from these administrators, so what, right? And so another study I read was that there were some special education teachers and building level administrators were studied to discover their leadership behaviors to find out what they felt was supportive, what type of leadership area was supportive. Now, administrators need to find out and practice which leadership behaviors special ed teachers think is supportive from their perspective. Because in this study, they found there was a disconnect between what administrators thought and what special education teachers thought. Special education teachers said that they value emotional support over all other types. And emotional support is partly what drives transformational leadership. And so that made me feel confident in, okay, I'm glad I chose transformational leadership as the area to focus on if special education teachers are saying this is what we need. And so with this study, it said the more knowledge that principals have of special education, the more they will support the programs on their campus, and the more likely they will be demonstrate leadership behaviors that are perceived as supportive to special education teachers. So then what do we need? There was another study that interviewed principals about their perceptions of their transformational leadership abilities, like I did, but they focused on the change process because, of course, transformational change is needed. And so they said that they wanted to receive professional development beyond instructional knowledge, wanted to include knowledge and skills in transformational leadership behaviors. And so the quote says, principals may benefit from the opportunity to focus on targeted professional development opportunities to learn the appropriate steps that effective organizational change requires through a transformational leadership framework. And I thought, well, okay, where is this framework? I searched high and low. I went through different studies and, of course, across all the general education studies. And I looked for a transformational leadership framework that would support special education teachers, inclusive education, students with disabilities, and I could not find one. So I decided to create one. And it's called Transforming Special Education Leadership Framework, TCEL. And so based on the research I conducted and the interviews I conducted with the school administrators and those results, I decided that this framework would foster emotionally supportive environment that improves special education teachers' job satisfaction, commitment, and retention. It's a framework that provides a systematic approach that building level administrators can apply to grow their transformational leadership capacity and self-efficacy as leaders of their special education programs. And of course, that includes the students with disabilities being fully embedded into the schools in all aspects across the board and inclusive settings. And it integrates transformational leadership principles with the Council for Exceptional Children's standards for administrators of special education. The Council for Exceptional Children is an international special education organization. And it emphasizes enhancing middle level administrators' leadership capabilities to foster the success and well-being of both students with disabilities and their special education teachers. So I wanted to make it easy to remember, and I used a mnemonic MISS, like miscellaneous, MISC, M is for motivate, I for influence, S for stimulate, and C is for consider. And so to provide special education teachers with an emotionally supportive environment, building level administrators can miss them using the TCEL framework. They can motivate, influence, stimulate, and consider. And the framework breaks down exactly how to do that in a practical way. So the first part is M, inspirational motivation. And I decided to say, put them on the map, MAP. Motivate teachers, articulate and share vision, and promote positive school culture. Building level administrators can motivate special education teachers by including them in monthly awards, shout out meetings, and featuring them in newsletters, for example. They can articulate a shared vision. And the shared vision, of course, can be the inclusive vision by hosting vision setting meetings between the general ed and the special ed teachers together to define the goals that will align with inclusive practices and the school objectives to create a shared sense of purpose. And that moves into promoting a positive school culture. Administrators can model that commitment to positive climate and reinforce a positive reinforcement cycle to let the teachers know, the special ed teachers know, we see you, we're here, we're all in this together. So that's M, inspiration, motivation, putting them on the map, and it's the where to start in this framework. I is idealized influence, bump them up on the priority list. And so, of course, sometimes and I'm sure it's not intentional, but special education, students with disabilities are not always the priority in a public school setting or general education setting. So, to bump them up on a priority list, BUMP, school administrators can build relationships, understand beyond compliance, model best practices, and promote ethical behavior. And so, in the research, of course, talking to the principals, they say they wanted to build relationships, and they can do that by having open communication, empathy, and engaging in regular, meaningful interactions with their special education teachers and general education teachers, for that matter. They can understand beyond compliance. Now, special education is driven by policies, laws, and procedures, but beyond compliance, meaning administrators can be intentional about engaging in learning and reflecting about special education to understand the unique needs of students with disabilities and the special education teachers who teach them. That would be being intentional about it is the biggest part of it. They can model best practices and model for the general ed teachers that they are attending special education trainings and they're actively supporting inclusive practices by being open about and publicly recognizing what the good things that are happening with the students with disabilities in the schools and promoting ethical behavior. They can address concerns as transparently as possible, and support equitable treatment amongst everyone. And so these things to support idealized influence helps to bump them up on the priority list. S, intellectual stimulation. See them. CSEE, specify supervision evaluation, encourage problem solving, and encourage innovative solutions. And so when I say specify supervision and evaluation, we know that when teachers are being observed, the administrator may have a tool that's general for everyone, but not maybe specific for students with disabilities. But with this framework, the administrator will research best practices for students with low incidence and high incidence to improve their observation techniques specific to the special education settings. And so, of course, we have students who are in the regular ed settings, but they're also in resource separate, those settings that strictly serve students with disabilities, regardless of where they are. If the administrator researches the best ways to meet their needs, regardless of what they're observing, they can give better feedback to that teacher, to those teachers to support those students. Encouraging problem solving, they can facilitate brainstorming sessions for the special education teachers to just be able to problem solve amongst each other, allow them to become a team amongst each other. But then with encouraging innovative solutions, the administrators can then also uh, put together professional development workshops between the general and the special education teachers to maybe talk about new methods of ways to increase the inclusive practices amongst the general and special ed teachers to support the students in the regular education classrooms. So S, intellectual stimulation, is seeing them and seeing what they have to offer and that they can be a part of the problem solving and the innovative solutions across the entire school. And lastly is C, individual consideration. Give them their roses. Rose, ROSE, recognize cultural differences, offer personalized feedback, share decision making, and empower teachers. Now we know that everyone is different. Every student is different, every teacher is different, but an administrator can actively acknowledge that these teachers have different professional development needs. They can focus on their culturally responsive and contextually relevant support and be specific about that. They can offer personalized feedback, like I mentioned before, having regular meetings, but the one-on-one meetings to discuss their goals, to let that teacher know, let the teachers know that that the administrators are interested in their well-being and recognize them for the individual things that they're doing so that they can continue to flourish. Shared decision making, administrators can include the special education teachers' voices in instructional strategies and input on policy changes to increase their autonomy. Autonomy is big. If the teacher feels like that they don't have a say in anything when they're the ones working with those students, it really just lowers the morale. And empower teachers. The administrators can allow the teachers to take initiatives and lead projects and to build their leadership skills. I mean, the special education teachers can conduct workshops with the general ed teachers and show them the strategies that work best for the students with disabilities. And the general ed teachers can use those strategies in those inclusive settings when the special education teacher is not present in the classroom. Empower the teachers. That seems very, it is a great way to let the teachers know that the administrators are individually considering them. So C, individual consideration, give them their roses. So this is what it looks like overall. Transforming special education leadership framework, put them on the map for inspiration and motivation, bump them up on the priority list, idealized influence, see them for intellectual stimulation, and give them their roses for individual consideration. What I also found was that there's a need to align standards, educational leadership standards with transformational leadership. There was a study that said that embedded student learning outcomes align with the National Educational Leadership Preparation and the Council for Exceptional Children Standards is needed in principal prep programs. So I'm going back to that because we have those principals who are in the field currently who can use this framework from day one, but we also have the pre-service administrators, the candidates who are not there yet, who can get this information up front before they enter into the schools. And that is the gist of the future of inclusive education, which is starting these concepts, embedding them from the beginning. And so the CEC administrative standards provide a specific direction to support building level administrators in the areas where more information is necessary to improve their capacity to lead special education programs and increase inclusive practices at their schools on the days that district level special education administrators are not physically present. And so we know that as the leader of the school, the administrator has a lot on their shoulders. So if the standards that are in their programs to prepare them includes this information in their preparation, they will be better able to run their school in an inclusive manner from day one. And so with that, I created student learning outcomes that can be embedded into educator preparation programs for school administrators based on the results of my study, based on results of the articles that I read. And so to add, to build special education to build school administrators' belief in their capacity to be special ed leaders, some student learning outcomes could be that they will describe instructional strategies used in different types of settings in the class when they're maybe in the leadership courses that are involved in the ed leadership programs. They should be able to differentiate characteristics between disability categories that will help them with their observations of the students. They can give examples of special ed teacher job demands so that they can have gain a better understanding of what the teacher experiences. They can also, during that class, develop their vision for special education, get that already started so that when they do enter into a school that they're a leader of, they already have an idea of how they're going to include students with disabilities in the overall scope of the school. The next set of student learning outcomes are pertaining to how they can raise awareness and understand special ed teacher working conditions, because a lot of times the way they, say, well, I don't know what to do is mostly because they don't really understand the full capacity of what the special education teacher has to do. So in this respect, they can describe team teaching practices to endorse collaboration between the general and special education teachers. They can learn about behavior concepts related to special ed, including behavior intervention plans and manifestation procedures. They can create a toolkit themselves for instructional strategies to use across the different service delivery models. And this using a toolkit that they'd have on hand that will better equip them to support the special ed teachers, especially the new ones who may not know really what to do. The administrator can say, well, maybe you should try this, or maybe you can try that. They can come with something when they're talking to those teachers. They can also describe human resource management specific to special education teachers, describing how they're different from the general education in order to realize, okay, here's what they need, and figure out a way to make sure everyone gets what they need. So these student learning outcomes help them to have a better understanding of the overall working conditions so that they can be improved. And the last set of student learning outcomes are related to how they can build the relationships with their special ed teachers, because as they mentioned in my study, they want to gain a better understanding of their special education teachers. So this is where the transformational leadership behaviors will be applied, is where they will practice idealized influence behaviors toward the special ed teachers by leading by example and demonstrating ethical behavior. And my idea is that these can be practiced in an internship situation. They can practice individual consideration behaviors with the special ed teachers, like offering professional development opportunities or even talking through what could be done. They can practice intellectual stimulation behaviors with the special ed teachers. They can practice the inspirational motivation behaviors with them and fostering and a team situation and recognizing teacher successes all during the internship if it's an intentional internship. Internships can become evaluated experiences embedded in the principal prep programs where administrators can reflect on the special ed practices. And what I found with this research is because I was able to talk to them, they were able to reflect on questions that they actually said, no one's ever asked me that before. No one's asked me how I feel about my leadership towards special education. It was eye-opening. And so I feel like in the principal prep programs, if this content is embedded, if internships, even if it's a couple of months, are embedded into their practice as they're learning, it would skyrocket the inclusive education, special education field, because these administrators will go into their schools with the idea that I am going to include everyone and I feel confident in knowing how. And so transformational leadership theory could already be in educational leadership programs, but it's important to add a special education context to it, an inclusive education context to those discussions. One of the administrators that I interviewed, he said, experience is the best teacher. When I did the administrative internship, I was there for about 3 months before I got moved to another school. It was the experience for me that was the best resource, and then being able to tap into special education teachers' knowledge. I would be remiss if I told you that I didn't have to tap into their knowledge all the time. So that administrator recognized that the internship that he had was important, but he also knew value in talking to the special education teacher about their knowledge because he wanted it. And I'm sure there's so many administrators or pre-service administrators out there who want to learn more. There just is not the overall push for education at the beginning level for them to gain the confidence that they need to lead special education programs. And so that's why I feel it's the future of inclusive education is embedding transformational leadership through a framework so that it can be embedded within the person, within the leader at the building level as they are leading their schools in an inclusive way. And that concludes my presentation. I would like to say this is my QR code for my contact information. Dr. Martha did mention that I wrote a book. It's called How to Retain Special Education Teachers, a Transformational Leadership Guide for School Administrators. And my number, my email address is all there with this QR code. And I look forward to your questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Martha, would you like to facilitate any questions that people might have?
Yes,
Perhaps you have a question yourself.
Yeah, sure. There are two questions. Can I start my video or not?
Yes, I'm going to stop my share.
Okay. It says that I cannot start my video. It's okay. We have here a question from Rudia W. Kihura. She's a special education teacher in Little Rock, Arkansas, and she wants to know if they are going to be provided the slides of the presentation, and she thanks for the summit. You can answer this, but you are sharing your contact information. Maybe she can get in touch with you and talk to you about the presentation. Maybe you can present in Arkansas. Why not?
Absolutely. That is a great idea. Yes. And if I need to share my screen again for my contact information, I can do that. I would be happy to interact with them.
Sure, that would be a good idea. And here we have another question. Let me read it. I have a question. How can we as parents, teachers, and students build capacity for administration and school boards to understand the benefits of this transformative approach? From Daniel Roder.
I think it starts with conversations. The conversations shared across the board about the needs of those who are providing the services. And so if the parents need support for their students with disabilities, but may not understand really what to do for their students, the conversation could happen between the parents and the administrators. Administrators may say, I don't quite know, but I will find out. Those conversations to start are important because not everyone knows everything, but as long as someone's willing to say, I will go and find out, I will do my best to figure it out. Because with the understanding that not everyone has the background in special education, the answers are just not pouring out of everyone. But I think it starts with those conversations. The transformative part of it is realizing that you're not alone in this. No one should feel alone in this. So don't be afraid to ask the questions. Don't be afraid to say, I don't know the answer. And that way, once those conversations start and we become more open as parents, as leaders, school board members, whomever, if we're more open about what we don't know, I think we'll be more open to learning more.
Great. There's another question here. Could you give us an example of intervention in a school to include a non-ambulatory child when it's when they are going to have physical activities at school?
Well, with that, the student who's non-ambulatory should have an IEP, individualized education plan, with the supports laid out for what they need. That's for starters. You would hope that that would be the case. What my frame in this is thinking that whatever's in that IEP, the support comes from above, from the administrators, from the leadership to say, make sure the student gets this. So if there is a need for that student to have maybe something altered at that school to be able to access a room, something that if there's a barrier that needs to be adjusted so that that non-ambulatory student can have access to that, that trickles back to, okay, where are the decision makers who are able to say, we need to make this change in order to support this student? Do you get what I'm saying? I know that not everything can be done for everyone, but I think the conversation should start with those who are able to allocate the proper resources to effectively meet the students' needs where they are, especially if it's already identified in their individual education plan.
Yeah, thank you. There are three more questions.
Okay.
How teachers can engage parents in more effective ways outside schools and classes? How school authorities can support here in low-income countries, rural areas? From Nusrat Serene. I don't know from
Hmm.
which country.
This makes me think of community partnerships. This makes me think of outside of the school setting when teachers are engaging in just ways to engage with parents, but in with community partnerships and with students with disabilities. A lot of times if they have related services or services outside of just the academics, there should be community agencies or those other networks that the teachers should know about that make, to make those connections. Well, I think if teachers were to share the information about what those related services are doing with the parents, in the sense that how can everyone come together for the students to meet the whole child like where they are, and get the parents, the related services, those who are out in the community together for those conversations. That doesn't necessarily have to be a standard formal individualized education plan meeting, but it can be, here's what the student needs, but I want to talk to you about the opportunities that are out in the community to enhance not just their learning, but their well-being, their the different aspects that are outside of the academics, and parents who may not be fully aware of what's out in the community. That teacher can maybe be the bridge of information. And that way, with just that little bit of extra knowledge that the teacher shared with the parents, that could also help that parent be more open to coming to them about gaining more information about how to help their student, not just with academics, but also how will they be able to thrive out in the world, out in the community after school.
Thank you. Now Gladys Patrick is asking, if the administration is supportive, but the teachers are not, what should we do?
That's a great question. I feel like it should be a trickle-down effect. If the administrators are supported, then the administrators should support the teachers. It just has to happen. That's just, it's like the snowball. Come
A
on
matter
over.
of time.
Yeah, I mean, you would think so, because right now it's flipped. It's teachers who may feel like they're not supported, but also quietly, secretly, maybe administrators are not feeling like they're supported either. And that's the kind of that's where I am right now with finding out, okay, who out there needs the support Can we talk about it? So that maybe once the administrators feel like they do have support, they can then feel more confident in supporting those teachers. So I think that's a big reason why a lot of the teachers are not feeling supported, is because those who are leading them don't feel supported either. But if those administrators are supported, then you would hope that they would feel like, okay, I'm getting what I need. I feel confident in this area. I can do this for my teachers, and then everyone is happy. That is the future of it all that we hope for.
Yeah. There is one more. Sarah Sheila Aloyo from Uganda. Hello, I am Sarah from Uganda. I also would like to know if the presentation can share. I work with children who are on cancer treatment. I give them special education, but I have challenges in delivering this lesson since they all have various challenges.
Hmm. That is an area where I would definitely say seek outside support, because I have a feeling that there are going to be very few people who know how to support that specific area of challenge. And I would say try your best not to handle that alone. And I have a feeling that those who are above you, the administration, may not know as well. But that's when you cast your net wider to find more resources. If there's a way to search through the internet globally, there are different maybe organizations that may have resources in that respect. So that does seem like it's a difficult situation regarding those types of students, but the lesser known disorders, or they're not as easy to meet the needs of for those students, the low incidence disabilities. But I would say cast your net wider as far as who you're asking for help, whether it's resources online or those beyond those at your building level.
Three more
Thank
questions. Just enter quickly. Was the
Quick one,
study
I think, Martha. We must wrap up.
okay? Well, just let me tell you, quantitative or qualitative study, and it can be replicated in other countries, and that's it.
Yes, it definitely can be replicated. It should be. And it is qualitative, because I sat down with the administrators and interviewed them one-on-one. It's qualitative because it was really important to hear their point of view and for them to say, I'm glad you asked that question.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Martha, for moderating, and thank you so much, Dr. Veale, for your wonderfully considered research. I couldn't help thinking as you were speaking how important this is, and I'm thinking of it from a different angle, really. I've seen administrators and teachers both outstanding and both appalling. And what frightens me in institutions is the rapidity with which people can be moved. And so, for instance, if you have a teacher who is outstanding, and for some reason the administrator doesn't support them, or worse, a new administrator comes in and doesn't support the program. How sad is that? And I'm sure you've experienced that. And I think your systemic approach is terrific. And I just hope that more and more people embrace the idea of this kind of support. So congratulations on your work. I was most inspired listening to you. Thank you.